This is not a sponsored video. You guys know I get quite a few of those, and oftentimes game companies will reach out to me and they'll be like, hey, can you make a video on our game? And then I'll look at it, I'll talk about it, whatever. This is just news though. And this is something I've been so excited about for such a long time. In fact, probably more creators than just me are excited, and you will be hearing from them very soon. Because Blue Protocol Star Resonance just got announced for a global release. Now, if you don't know what Blue Protocol Star Resonance is, but maybe you know what Blue Protocol is, maybe you're confused on what that's about. Essentially, there was this anime MMORPG that was in development for a really long time called Blue Protocol. It was developed by Bandai Namco, and they were based out of Japan. So it was going to be a Japanese anime MMORPG, but somehow, some way, everything went horribly wrong, and the game released in Japan first after like 10 years of waiting. The game, if you Google it, it says the game was announced in 2022. That is not true. Blue Protocol was a game that maybe the release wasn't officially announced, but the game was in development way before then, and it is actually a large reason why so many content creators that played Genshin Impact ended up being a Genshin Impact creator. Because what happened is this game was taking so long to come out. I think it had to have been announced in 2018 or earlier. I don't remember when. I just remember seeing an MMO Byte video on it way back in the day when I was looking for a new MMO. And amongst all of the hype of this game, Blue Protocol, this game comes out of nowhere called Genshin Impact, something we had never before seen in the West. Is like a high quality gacha game. So all the Westerners who have never touched gachas before, I mean, there are some, right? But people like me, who is like, I played casually Pokemon Masters EX. I didn't even know what a gacha game was at that point, right? So Genshin Impact comes out and we're like, oh my God, it's an anime RPG. That's all I wanted. Because so many people wanted just an anime RPG to play, and some people wanted an anime MMORPG to play, but Genshin Impact comes out and it fills that gap. And we're like, okay, I'll just play this until fuck. And some of us are like, okay, I'll just play this until Blue Protocol comes out. That was what I did. And then I heard it was going to be announced, and then I was like, oh my God, this is it. Finally, we're going to get to play. They release it in Japan only, and it's absolutely cooked. When you release a game to one region only, when the entire world's excited about it, you fuck the game. I don't know how many times we have to tell you this, old man. You know, like how many times do we have to repeat this same old song and dance where we release a game earlier in another region when the entire world is excited for it? It was different back in the day because we didn't have as much globalization and social media showing us everything that was going on in all parts of the world, but now we do, right? So now the expectation is a global release, which Blue Protocol Star Resonance is doing. Now, before I tell you more about Star Resonance, because I've just been yapping about the history of Star Resonance and why this is such a big deal, you do need to know where Star Resonance came from. So essentially, Blue Protocol did end of service. That game is dead. The Japanese MMORPG is completely dead. The reason is because they released it in Japan first, and they didn't focus enough on the gameplay, and they focused too much on cosmetics, and it caused the gameplay to fall flat and players to be unhappy. That's the problem. Well, one company, I believe they're called Bokura, they bought the rights to Blue Protocol to make a mobile version of the game when Blue Protocol came out, and they were going to call it Blue Protocol Star Resonance. Now, when Blue Protocol EOS'd, I think they basically just got free reign to do like whatever they wanted with it. So they took the world of Blue Protocol, the art style of Blue Protocol, and like the combat and stuff, and they kind of overhauled a lot of the bad things about it. So like the combat is much better, the class design is much better, the character and world progression feels much better. And they did all of that and then ported it over to a mobile device. So now we essentially have upgraded Blue Protocol. Now you might be wondering, well, Brax, I haven't heard of Bokura. What is that? How did they get the money for this? That doesn't make sense. Well, actually, it was Tencent. To my knowledge, Tencent is funding Bokura and the creation of Star Resonance, and then they realized once Blue Protocol EOS how much hype there was for a global release, or like for other players that still wanted to play Blue Protocol. So now they announced the global release. So that's what this is. It's essentially Blue Protocol Premium Pro Max Ultra Plus Plus. It's like Blue Protocol, but they took out some of the bad systems, put in some better systems, and it's going to be available globally on PC and mobile. So now we have another platform too. I do hope we get a console release. They didn't say anything about it, but hopefully that can happen, because if you can port something to mobile, you can port something to console. Let's be honest. So I was actually in the CN beta test for Blue Protocol Star Resonance, so I got to play it a fair bit. The problem for me is that, like, obviously I can't read any form of Chinese. So a lot of what I was doing was guessing based on my previous MMO experiences. And I did figure out a lot of systems, and it very much is an MMO at its core. Although it does play a little differently from some of the MMOs that I'm used to. And I don't know if that's just like a studio decision or if that's like a regional thing. But either way, there is a lot of stuff to do in the game, which I think was the biggest problem that Blue Protocol initially had, was that there just wasn't enough actual content to play. There are some concerns I have still, and I'll talk about those in a moment. But what you should know is that this game has a lot more to do at the moment than original Blue Protocol did, and I think that's a huge W. For example, you can go life skilling, you can dungeon spam for gear score if you want to increase your gear score, you can just run dungeons infinitely. I know a lot of people were really worried about, myself included, about them putting like a stamina system in for dungeons where you can only run a certain amount of dungeons a day, but you can actually run dungeons infinitely. There is no stopping you from running one infinitely. You do get bonuses for the first 2 dungeons you run every day. That's your daily incentive to play, is that your first 2 dungeons give you bonus loot, but you can technically just run it over and over and over for gear. And there's also other classes, and you can get all of the classes on one character, which means that you can progress all of your classes on one character. If you've already maxed one out, that doesn't mean you have nothing to do on that character anymore. You can still max out other jobs or other classes, not jobs, and swap between them. There's world bosses, elite farming for materials. There's a challenge tower that has multiple floors. There's 20-man raids. There's plenty of guild content. There's fishing. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, the fishing one seems like a pretty big deal, because I feel like every single game there's fishing in, there's like a cult of fishermen who like sit there and fish all day, every day, and that's like what they do for the entire game. Like all the way from beginning to EOS, these guys are crazy. But I'm happy for them. You know, they found something that they enjoy doing, and go fish, man. You also have class role trials that you need to do to level up your classes. So, I mean, there's just a lot of things for you to sit down and actually do every single day. Now, there are downsides, because remember, I played the beta and I got to experience firsthand what it felt like to have a stamina system in an MMO. The stamina system is not for dungeon and gearing. It is, however, for crafting and gathering. Now, for some people, that is a huge deal, and that's a deal breaker, and I totally get it. For me, I'm not someone who's always spent a lot of time crafting and gathering, but it does feel like it has some pretty good applications in this game, mostly because by crafting and gathering, you can get things that you need to upgrade your gear, and it limits the amount of things that you can do per day. So essentially the way it works is you have a cap of 2,000 stamina, and every single day at reset, you get 400 stamina. Every single thing you craft or gather takes 10 stamina, so you can craft or gather up to 40 things combined for your daily stamina. But since the game will launch with you capped at 2,000, so I would recommend, like, if you guys are starting out, probably just go grab a bunch of stuff so your stamina doesn't cap.
There's also some different ways to get stamina. One of my biggest pieces of this is just the fact that you can buy the stamina. You can't buy too much of it. There's actually a really short limit of how much you can actually buy, but there's ways to get more stamina, and it involves using the cash shop. So I'm not a big fan of that. But if you do want a stamina max, you actually get different stamina on every character you have. So if you make 3 characters, each character is going to get 400. And if you're trading that on the market board, or if you're just trying to farm skills or whatever that may mean, you technically can get up to 1,200 stamina a day across your 3 characters. But yeah, that has been the biggest sort of upset I've had about the entire thing, is that gating, this is based on the beta, by the way, so this still could change, but gating your crafting and gathering behind stamina, I do think is not great. It's not the worst thing. I would much rather them gate crafting and gathering than dungeon runs, because like the main content of an MMO is running content with your friends, and I feel like, you know, if I'm gonna go run dungeons, if I'm gonna run bosses, raids, and stuff like that, I'd rather not have those gated by stamina. That just takes away like so much of what the game is supposed to be. But either way, you still are gating some sort of side content, which I don't think is good. The other issue with Star Resonance is that it does have one of the same issues that Tower of Fantasy has. This does not matter if you start playing the game like a month in, but it matters for people playing at launch. They are time gating the main story quest. So essentially what that means is after you do the first quest, there's going to be a server, I believe it's server side. There's going to be a server time where the next quest unlocks. And that is another artificial mechanism to slow down progression to make sure people don't rush to end game immediately. Now, as far as I can tell, none of this stuff actually exists outside of Chinese MMOs. I haven't played a ton of Korean MMOs. I wasn't there at Lost Ark launch, so I don't know if they did the same thing. But it is something that I find quite frustrating. Really hoping that they don't do that on release and that it was just a beta thing, but we will see. There is a possibility that you do the quest and then you have to go do side content for the rest of the day because the next quest doesn't unlock for 32 hours. So in my opinion, those are the 2 biggest downsides. I know some people don't like the graphics. I'm personally a fan. I think it looks like anime and very cartoonish, the way that the characters move. And I feel like that's kind of on brand for what the game is. I know some people don't like that, but that's I mean, that's just my opinion. I think it's cool. But yeah, so this is a game that everyone has been waiting for a super long time, and I've been waiting for it for a super long time. Now it's
It's like Blue Protocol died, and then they harvested Blue Protocol's organs and put them into another vessel. And now that thing is alive, but you know, it seems better and stronger than ever before. Blue Protocol Star Resonance, I'm very excited for it. And with the announcement of a global release, you can absolutely expect me to be full diving into that game when it comes out. I've always been an MMO junkie. I have played so many MMOs throughout my life. I love investing all of my time into one game and being able to play that game with my friends for meaningful content. Am I still gonna cover other games? Time will tell. It depends how much time I have when Blue Protocol comes out, right? But I am absolutely gonna be talking about that game a lot because I love MMORPGs, and finally, after what feels like centuries, we get to play an anime MMORPG that is not Aura Kingdom. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think about Blue Protocol Star Resonance if you guys are gonna be playing, and I will catch you guys in the next video. See ya.